So, so yes, we got this new edge here. Oh, I didn't notice when that cut off. Let's just hold Control backspace, and that gets rid of it. I'll just show you that again. I'm not sure where the video cut off. So, right click, connect. That puts our one edge. Back to the right, orthographic view. Grab by vertex, grab those, drag them on up. We'll see that dot came right up to there, so we're going to want to get that just a titch higher. So now you notice this dot is actually just a titch far forward. So I did a marquee selection to grab all these vertices, and I'm just going to move that over a tiny bit. Great, so now we've got that shape. Next, let's start pulling out some other big shapes. Oh my. I think I actually have this backwards because, yes. So as it turns out, I actually have one of my images backwards. So if you notice, over here, uh, the chimney is supposed to be on this side of the house, but on this image, we've got it on this side of the house, and we do on the back as well. So what we're going to do is, and actually my original design did have the chimney over on the left-hand side and not on the right. So yes, we are going to unfreeze all to be able to grab that back piece, and we're going to mirror that right across X, and we're going to do the same with that. And we're going to need to realign, which isn't a big deal. So we just grab that, and now we can align it to our vertices. So that's decent, and this is decent. No, that's not correct. I needed this. Actually, let's line up with this side, because you notice there's the side of the house and then there's the chimney that comes out farther. So you want to align this up with where the actual house is and not with the chimney, because we haven't built that yet. That's going to come a little bit later. So I was lining up the wrong edge. Let's go to there instead. So that's better, right? So now I've got the chimney is on the left-hand side, just like that image says, just like that image says, and just like that image says. Excellent. Okay. You're too close. Move away. You're too far. Move in. And back to layers. So we're just going to go ahead and freeze those again so we can get back to work. A lot of 3D modeling is problem solving, so get used to it. Okay, so next we're going to pull out this little shape out here, not the rooftop. We're not going to make a big box and then peak the top. We're going to make a small box and pull up the peak the same way that we did with this side here. So to do that, let's add a... Okay, now you notice, yeah, I am going to use a Swift loop, but you notice when I come across, it's trying to average the angles, right? It's trying to get as smooth a curve as possible going straight around, not trying to follow a perfectly straight line. So what we'll do is actually connect a few dots. Now, to connect this vertex to this vertex, we can't just select these two and right-click connect, because there's this edge in the middle that's getting in the way, right? There's no the connect is only from vertex to vertex, with nothing in between. And you can do multiples together. You can do a whole sequence of them together and kind of do a connect the dot. However, if there's anything that impedes it in the middle, it's going to stop. So what we're instead going to do is we're going to cut. Now there's a number of ways to select cut. We can easily do it with the button over here, Or we can right click and cut is, sorry, up here. Or there's the tools up here that right there. So when we cut, we get this new icon. So you see it's kind of a square box with a dot in the middle. As I come over and hover beside an edge, see that square becomes a horizontal line, which is a little bit of a vertical line coming out of it. So if it's a box, that means it's going to cut onto the face. So if I grab this face, I cut that onto the existing geometry in a very bad way, right? This is a floating polygon in the middle of another polygon. We don't want to do that. So we're just going to undo that. Come back to cut. If I hover close to an edge, it gets this horizontal line, and that means that I'm cutting straight away from an edge as opposed to in the middle of the face. And if I select a vertex, you see it goes from the square box to a small cross. And that's the one that we want. So we're going to go click when there's a small cross, zoom on out, and we're going to go right over to this other vertex that we want to connect it to and line it up so that we get that, again, small cross. Right click to stop cutting. Go to the other side, we're going to do the same thing. So the small cross, right across here, right click to stop, right click again to deselect cut. So now, sorry, let's grab a little drink. So now when I put my Swift loop right here, it's going to do a perfectly straight line because I have a perfectly straight line here and a perfectly straight line there. So the average between two straights is straight. I'm going to need one more edge along the front. Again, Alt X to enable transparency. Grab that Swift loop, and we're going to put it right there. So you see, we're going to grab this face, we're going to extrude it out to create that new section. So to do that, we can right click, extrude with options, and we can drag this out that way. We could also just say right click and click on extrude, and then say click and drag. That same tool is up here. We can click on the drop down settings, and it exists over here as well. So let's get back to the right angle, Alt X to go transparent, and we're just going to drag this until it lines up there, and check mark. Excuse me, I got a really dry throat. Just a moment. Okay, sorry about that. So with that cut, let's also do that on the other side. So you notice over here, we've got a little bit of a lip coming out forward. So the roof actually comes down on that angle and comes out forward to create this shape in the front here. So let's go ahead and create that. So we don't need to make a side cut. We just need to make that front cut. Front. Swift loop again. And we drop that there. So now we can grab these two faces back to the left. And we're going to extrude those out to this spot. Not quite so far. So again, right click, extrude with settings. And it remembers the last spot that I had set. So I'll just drag that back down to about there. And we're gold. Next, we're going to want to make the peak in this roof. So let's go ahead. We'll do it with a Swift loop, just like that. Press 2 to grab your edges, right? This is 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 on your keyboard. So just 2. We're only going to want this one little edge. And we're going to drag that up like that. This one's going to be a little bit different. We're going to start off the same way, though. We're going to put our Swift loop. right in the middle, right click to stop Swift looping. But this time, if I grab this edge and I start pulling it up, as it doesn't work the same as over here, right? Over here, we were pulling up along that edge, but we're not actually coming all the way up to the roof, so it's not a problem because it's straight. This, we actually want it to be different, right? Because we want the roof to have this big flat section here, and then have a separate triangular piece coming off of it. So it doesn't flow one into the other. It's two angles coming very sharply to a point. So just dragging that up is not going to help us much. What we want is to pull this up, and then we're going to drag the top edge back. So to pull this up without pulling up these two faces, right, to peak this without affecting these two, we're going to separate them. So let's grab edge, and we just want to cut these two so that they're no longer connected, right? So we're going to go over here. Now this isn't a cut. A cut creates an edge on existing geometry. What we want to do is split. It's down here in Edit Edges, Split. Now you don't see a lot having changed, but if I now grab this edge and just drag it up, you see these have been sliced apart from each other, so they're no longer, changing one doesn't change the other. Let's go to the front, Alt-X to get our transparency back, and we just drag that down to about there. There, now we have this big open thing. We could grab that vertex and pull it back, and that at first glance looks okay, right? It's giving us the angles that we want. It's giving a flat roof connecting to a flat roof and not curving or bending anything. But this remains unconnected to anything. And that will no doubt pose problems a little bit later on. And you generally want your models to be watertight, which is to say that there's no open faces, there's no open edges, and that way light cannot get in. Because if light comes in unnaturally, it will go out and look very unnatural, right? So if I were to do this, let's say even leave it back there, light can come in through this hole and it can shine out through here, right? So I'll see as though the sunlight was passing through the building and coming and casting light down here. That's really not what we want. So we want to weld this point up here. To do that, we're going to grab this vertex, which is what we want these two to be connected together, and I'm going to drag it up along this edge, right? So it slides right along that edge. To do that, we use a constraint. So we've got edit geometry, and we're going to constrain by edge. So that way, it's not going to move wherever we want it to move. It's only going to move along existing edges. So I can drag it side to side, but if I try to drag it straight back, you see it's not going straight back, it's going up on an angle, right? Because straight back would actually be coming along this edge. But I pulled straight that way. Oh, sorry, you can't see it. I'm pulling straight along this angle, and you see it's going up on that diagonal because I've forced it to only follow edges. Let's just put that back flat. We're going to come to the front, and we're going to align that perfectly with that. Just by dragging up, it'll get right to that spot. And you see the line gets quite a bit thinner when they're actually aligned. Another thing that I can do to more perfectly align is to use a snapping. So up here we've got our snapping tool, right? The three with a magnet. So similar to the angle snap, which is mainly for rotation angle, the snaps toggle, when you right click on it, gives you this new dialog box. So we can choose, do we want to snap to grid points? So when you put a grid down, you can have it jump to the next square edge and it'll only go there. What we want though is by vertex. because we want to line this vertex up with this existing vertex. So we're going to turn that on, click on this, and you notice when I'm in snapping mode, I get a little yellow arrow, right? If I get just close to it, I get an arrow. If I turn off snaps by pressing S, I don't get a yellow cross. Press snaps, you notice even my cursor changes, right? Here I've got a little white square and those angles. When I turn on snapping, it's highlighting these three angles because they're being controlled by another tool. Anyhow, we just grab this when there's cross. Whoops, grab that. Hey, come on now. Don't be stupid. Grab that. And you see when I come up here, it turns green to say that, yes, I understand. I am lining up along the Y, right? Y is green, right? You see this color here is green. So it's saying I'm lining up on the green axis, which is Y, which is exactly what we want. We're going to turn off snapping, so press S or click that button up there. And we're going to take this, right click, target weld, target weld, U, get a dotted line to U. So now you can see that's all nicely welded together, right? Sorry, let's even turn off constraints. So when I grab one, it is grabbing the other and moving it into position. Everybody good so far? Good, let's keep going. So the next thing that we're going to want to do is, let's say, add the chimney is probably the next large architectural piece. As I mentioned before, you want to start big general shapes, big general concepts, and refine, 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 refine until you get to the smallest objects. At which point you're probably going to be adding in other pieces of geometry to fill that out. But the next big architectural piece that we've got is the chimney. So if we look at the chimney, it's also not just a straight box, right? It comes down, it comes over, gets a little bit wider for where the actual fireplace is, because the chute, the chute, I think, the chimney doesn't need to be as wide as the actual spot that you're putting down the logs and wood and everything, so it does get smaller as it goes up. The other thing is that it's not something that's just clicked onto the outside of a house. Provided the house was built with a fireplace, it's going to start inside the house, which is where your fireplace actually is, right? It's on the inside of the inside wall and reaches out into your room a little bit. But the outside of it, the back wall of the fireplace, is going to go out past the outside of your house because it takes a certain amount of depth. So we can't just pull out, we can't just uh, pull something out of the roof. We're going to need to do a little bit of both. So the first thing I'm going to do is basically just put an easy little line along this back edge. Like that. But you notice it didn't cut all the way through because I'm using Swift Loop. Now, Swift Loop tries to be intelligent, and you see as I hover over it or any of these other tools, you get a nice big drop down so it'll describe what it's doing. But it's going to try to set it along an intelligent loop. If it can't figure out what that intelligent loop is, it'll just stop. And that can be to your advantage, right? You might want exactly this, and then I can take this and maybe that and connect those two together, right? Maybe that's what I want. In this case, it's not. So we're actually going to use an entirely different tool that does a similar thing, and that's called the slice plane. I'm going to grab my polygon and make sure I have no actual polygons selected, because if I have any polygons selected within this, then it's going to try to only cut that. So our slice plane is right over here, right? Slice plane. And you see, as soon as I click on that, I get this yellow square around it, right? So that's just the reference of telling us where it's going to slice. So what we're going to do is rotate this up 90 degrees. If for whatever reason it's not snapping anymore to the angle, just press A for angle snap, and it'll go from 5-degree increments to every increment. And you can keep dragging and tap A, and it'll swap between them, so you don't have to lose where you were. So I want a vertical plane, and I want that vertical plane to be right along that edge. So I just grab my move tool and move that over. Another little reminder, just like 1, 2, 3 are these buttons here, W, E, and R are move, scale, and rotate. So I most often have my hand right up there, just like I'm playing a first-person shooter, and I've got W, E, R, and then I can easily just go up that row, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and that makes it much faster than coming over here, click, come back over here, click, go back over there, click, come back up here, click, come back down here. You find the shortcut keys, and it makes your life a whole lot easier. So now that I've got this plane, this slice plane in the location that I want, I come over here and click slice. Sorry, I come over here and click slice. Why are you not doing that? Do I have a face selected? No? Hold on a second. What's going on here? Slice plane. And you notice I also don't see a red line cutting through, which is kind of bothering me. Why is that not working? What if we do that? What if we do that? Slice plane. Well, there it wants to do it, and you see it's already putting the line on my geometry. We'll work with that. Okay, so we click slice, turn off the slice plane, and we've got the edge that we wanted. Back to left, Alt X, back to transparency. Next, we're going to need an edge to control where it comes along the inside. So for that, we probably also only need a swift loop, because that should be a nice sharp straight vertical line, and that works for me. So let's next get that little diagonal on the side, right? Because we've got this edge coming down and not aligning with that. So we're gonna go, how about another swift loop, just like that. It's got nice edges to follow. And we're just going to grab a couple of these edges. Let's grab that whole back section. And we'll just drag that. Whoa, not that, not those. Let's make sure I really don't have more than what I need by holding Alt and click dragging to eliminate, to subtract from selection. Excellent. So now we've got the right shape, right? That's coming out there. Come from the side, or from the front rather. Right click, extrude with settings. We're just going to pull that on back. So now you see I've got the exterior building shape. But we've still got the top of the chimney to come out. So let's, again, right click, extrude with settings. We're going to bring this down just a little bit. But that didn't do what I wanted it to do, right? It's because extruding is generally going to go along the existing normal. And the normal is the direction the face is facing. So this face, you see, is pointing up on a diagonal. This face is facing the camera when I'm on this side, right? It's facing that side. And because we selected faces that are on a diagonal, extruding is going to want to pull it out on that diagonal. So we're going to need to find another way. So the way that we're going to do is actually just delete those two faces. So you've got to tiny little hole here. We're going to grab the border of that hole. We're going to hold Shift, click and drag on the Z. Right, so I just pulled that straight up by holding Shift and dragging, and now I've got basically an extrusion in the direction that I wanted it to. But it's on this weird diagonal. So for that, to solve that, we're going to select our scale, and we can pull down through the screen multiple times, make sure that that is perfectly flat. The other way to do that is I can make planar. That didn't work, so I think I want planar on Z. And make planar, just like a plane is a two-dimensional flat surface, make planar makes multiple polygons a two-dimensional flat surface. If you just click the words make planar, it'll take the average of those and flatten them out on whatever angle that they are on. So it can be this weird diagonal that's, on multiple axes. If you click on X, Y, or Z, it'll flatten along that plane. So I clicked Z so that it flattens down to a single Z plane, right? Because the Z plane says pointing up and down is sliced horizontally this way. So I want it down on one Z plane. X being this side, right? But there you can see the actual X there is going to flatten it along this one of these planes coming this way, and Y, because it's back and forth, is increments this way. So it's going to flatten along this. It can take a little bit of getting used to as to which one you want, and there's no problem with clicking one, undo, click the next, undo, click the next, until you find exactly what you want. So now I've got the top bit of the chimney poking out, but it's gotten too high. So just, again, W to get the move tool. We're going to drag that down a little bit. And let's use a couple of our little tools up here. So go by edge. Now we'll just, so hold shift, let's scale out a little bit like that. Whoop. That's fine. Bring that up a little bit, like to there. Scale that down, drag it up. Hold shift to add those new polys. Let's make that just a little bit bigger. So I'm not holding shift just to increase the size. Now, how centered is this? It doesn't feel terribly centered. So let's move that out a little bit. And again, we're just going to make one more step like that. And we can clean this up later, but what we're going to do is add an edge through the middle here. Right click connect. Now this is going all the way around and it's actually creating more geometry than I need, but I can clean that up a little bit later. Because what I want to do is make this into a circle, and the best way to do that is to have the same number of sides on each side. If I didn't have that, you see that on the top and bottom there's two, but then on each side there's only one edge. So I'm going to put that back in. So I click one edge, hold shift, and click the next consecutive edge, and it's going to try to loop all the way around. In this case, we do have a nice loop of geometry, so it's not going to be a problem. Right click connect, we've got that loop back. We're going to grab this inside border, hold control and click edge, and that way you know that your selection is copied over. Whatever you had selected here will be translated into an edge selection. Click on this drop down of loops, right here, loops, loop tools. And now we get this new little dialog box here, and we're going to click on circle. So that changed our loop of polygons, loop of edges, into a perfect circle. And with this, we can drag this up. Now that's too big, so I'm going to grab faces, all those faces, and we're going to just scale these down. Whoa, we need to. We want to move that just a smidgen so that we can grab these, scale them down only on these two. A little bit bigger. That'll do nicely. So let's go back to this border. Make sure that when you press R, that you're not changing the scale mode, because like this one, non-uniform, is going to bulge things out because it tries to keep volume. So just make sure that you're not doing that. So hold Shift, click and drag in, switch to move, hold Shift, click and drag down. And now we're going to right click and cap. Cap. So that put a polygon right at the base of our tube, because just like what I mentioned over here about seeing through the roof and casting light in weird ways, light could come down through the chimney into the empty geometry of the house and cause problems there. And we've got too many sides on this polygon, right? Because we always want to have, as much as possible, 4-sided polygons. 3s are okay, and uh, more than 4 is absolutely no. So that doesn't necessarily matter what direction we're in right now. Okay, we still need a couple more edges, so connect that and connect this. There we go. So now we've got 4-sided and a 3-sided polygon in the middle there, and that's going to stop light from getting to the inside of our house. Now, one rule of thumb that I have not mentioned yet is save early, save often, and iterate. Right. So by iterating, I mean don't just always overwrite the same file. Get to a logical point and then create a new save file and build on the next one, because that way, if a file becomes corrupted, if there's a power outage, if there's a crash, you don't lose all of your work. You'll just lose the stuff until your previous save. And when you're dealing with complex models or crazy lighting and rendering, it is highly possible that 3ds Max is going to crash on you, or whatever other application. All the different applications crash at one point or another. So you're going to want to make sure that you don't lose all of your work. So let's go ahead and save this. So let's save as. I'm going to put this in my 3D modeling folder. Let's just put it here. So we're going to call this house 01. Okay. So that's a good start. The next thing we're going to do is, what's the next architectural element? I think it's this front porch. So this front porch, because you can see that there's tiles here, just like the roofing tiles up there, that means that there's an extra lip that's sticking out. Now there's nothing on the side that's telling you where that is. There's nothing on this side because it's being hidden by the other pieces of geometry. All right, front, back, we're not going to see how far it sticks out because it's really this polygon that's going to be moving forward, but it's only going to be moving forward, somewhere in here, so it's still going to be hidden by those other sides. So to do that, what we're going to need is our transparency, and we're going to need an edge loop right along where that roof goes. So again, with our Swift loop, but you notice this is not giving us a good loop. All right, it's making this weird triangle over the top. So we're going to undo that, and we're going to try this slice plane again. So slice plane, we're just going to click reset plane. That brings it back to the horizontal, and we drag that to there. And I'm not quite sure why that's not doing it. Normally that should do it without having to select faces, but instead we'll just select these faces, not those, not those. Ah, see, I never cut that across either. We'll live. So yes, so if we go, so that's going straight around the house, looks good. And you see it's not cutting across these two faces because I didn't have them selected. So hey, let's add them in, put that slice plane, and now we've got a nice line that goes all the way around the building, and slice, turn off slice plane. Sorry, thought I saw something weird. Okay, so now we've got the top and bottom edge of this roof piece that we're going to be creating. So Alt X to come back to transparency, right? Because we've got that nice shape is what's going to be coming out, and then we'll connect that together afterwards. So to do this, I'm thinking that that lip is not going to quite come all the way to the front, right? It's just going to stop just before getting to the front. So let's grab these and these, and we're going to use that slice plane again, only instead of being, whoops, sorry, not quick slice, slice plane. Instead of being that way, we're going to rotate this to a vertical, make sure that that is 90 degrees. And we're going to drag this forward to about there. Feels good. I think that feels good. So slice, turn off slice plane. So now we can actually grab that, and that, and delete them. We don't need that anymore. What we will do is grab this, drag that over a little bit, grab our points, and we'll target weld that point to that point, that point to that point. So now we've got our overhang. Right, that's coming forward and overhanging above the door. And then we're going to grab edges, grab this edge and this edge, so the bottom and the top of that angle, and we're going to bridge. So this setting here, you may not see this extra ribbon, right? You may be looking at this, and what you want to do is just click on this show full ribbon. Give it a second there, and we just click bridge. Next, we've got a little hole here. So we select the border, right click cap. Now over here, we could do the same thing, right click cap, select these two edges, and connect. So that should be good and should be keeping. So if I go by angle of 0, that, right, because that's going to select everything that's along one plane. If the angle is 0, it won't grab anything else. Oh, and we'll ignore back facing. All right, so it's grabbing everything that is flat. See, this is a little bit weird, right? Like that came out, so let's just make planar. So this time when we select it, why are you doing that? That's strange. Okay, well, we won't worry too much about that. But yes, selecting there, that's single plane, single plane. I really don't understand why this is separate. That and that. Make planar. Let's even make planar to Y. Whoa. X. My mistake. Still being silly here. Don't understand why, but we won't worry about that. So yeah, so we've got our overhang over the door now. Next, we will, what if we look at the back? What's on the back? Okay, on the back, we've got a bunch of windows up along the roof. We've got some windows on the back. We got some windows on the front. We've got this breakfast nook. Let's call it a breakfast nook over on the front here. And then just windows and doors. Now, windows and doors, you'll often want to have those modeled separately from the whole house. There's a couple of different reasons for that. For one, that's kind of how they do it in the real world, right? If you have a house built, they'll often give you a design concept, right? So you choose between house one, two, three, four for the general layout of the floor plan. And then on top of that, they're going to ask you, okay, what fixtures do you want? What doors do you want? What windows do you want? What floors do you want? And all that. So those are going to be different from house to house. Um, and by building them separately, if you're making a video game or a movie or animation, whatever, you can swap out the windows and the doors from one house to another and give the illusion that you've actually modeled more separate variations of a similar building. But what you've actually just done is made one house, made two or three sets of doors, two or three sets of windows, and slapped those on top of the house model. And that way uh, you save memory, you save a lot of work, if nothing else. So next, we're going to need to do a little bit of cleanup because we actually, in working some of this, we created some geometry that's not needed. We also have a little bit of a weird shading thing on the top, so we're going to grab the entire element, and since it's one big object, it's all one element. Going to come over here to smoothing groups, and you see in the various shapes, I've got smoothing group 1 through 7 selected on the various faces, right? So if I were to select just these, you can see, okay, well, that is all smoothing group 3. That face is all smoothing group 4. This is all smoothing group 4. But then it's also thinking that this side of the roof and this side of the roof are on the same smoothing group. For now, we're just going to get rid of them all. So we select it all and clear all. So now we don't have any weirdness with the shadows, right? Let's turn off the edges. Here, if you don't want to see these lines, normally it would be F4 to toggle between, and F3 is from wireframe to that. But let's say I don't want to unselect this, but I don't want to see those edges. For that, we need to go up into Views, Viewport Configuration. Right? Each of these views is called a viewport, and we can configure that to display selected with edge faces. So that's going to check mark and it's always going to be on. So let's just turn that off. We don't need it always to be on. And I'll just crank up that setting. All right, so now I can press F4 and not see those edges while still having this selected. All right, so far so good, I guess. F4 to bring that back. So, I kind of feel like this face here should be a little bit farther forward, but not as far forward as the rest of the overhang. So, let's see, how will loop work for us? Yes, it will. And then we come in with a cut. Hopefully this will work correctly. Cut from there. Whoa, too far. Over to here. Beautiful. So that means that we can delete that face. Sorry, right click to stop cutting. We're going to turn off by angle. And we grab these faces, delete, and then we go to edge. Grab that edge and that edge, bridge, grab that edge and that edge on the bottom, and bridge. Right, so now that's coming a little bit farther forward than this was, but not so far forward that you don't get the advantage of an overhang and some place to stand if it's raining. But like I was saying, we're getting extra geometry that's really not necessary that we're going to need to clean up, right? So Over in here, we don't need a lot of this. All of these extra edges on the top, we can get rid of those. And that is actually going to make our modeling a little bit easier as we go forward. So let's go ahead and right click, target weld, and let's bring these up. Yeah, okay. Sorry, just thinking there's always more than one method to do any job. So I was thinking, oh, well, maybe this could be done in a different way, but we're not going to worry about complicated. We're just going to get used to these tools. Right, that's the main reason that I'm doing this is I want you to learn how to do some 3D modeling. It's a lot of fun. Little things like this can be a little bit tedious, and there are some parts that oh, I'm gonna have to repeat this over and over and over. Oh, gotta stitch all these things together. But that's part of the fun, honestly. Um, to get the end result that you're happy with, you can't just slap things together and expect it to be good enough. If all you're doing is trying to finish as fast as possible, then you're not going to be satisfied with your work. You're not going to want to show it to anybody. If you show it to anybody other than your mother, then they're not going to care, right? They're going to look at it. It's like, oh yeah, congratulations, you did a 3D model. It looks like BS. Why bother, right? There's no point to creating something if it's just going to be bad. So that's a little bit better, right? There's a whole bunch of less geometry in use, and yeah. So let's say I was going around and I was cleaning up even more. If I move this down, I now have this polygon that's got one, two, three, four, five sides. And that's not good, right? We never want to have a polygon that's got more than four. One, two, three, four, five. Actually, this one does too. So let's clean that up by doing a quick little cut from point to point. See, that's already better as far as topology flow. And actually looking at this line, that actually doesn't need to be there wrapping all the way around the house, right? I can easily push this over and just have it glue to a different spot. Yeah, so we're going to do that as well. Let's go one, target weld, and let's get rid of some of these unnecessary pieces of geometry. Wait, what is that edge there for? That is also not necessary for the most part. So what we can do is just hold Control, backspace, so that gets rid of all of those edges as well as the vertices involved. And then we just need to correct these faces with too many sides by connecting that together. We may even get rid of the entire floor of the building because essentially that building is going to be inset into the ground, and then the ground will keep the light from penetrating. But for now, we'll just leave it there. Okay, so we've got that going. We can do some more cleanup. Let's do some cleanup, right? So let's see. We don't need a bunch of this geometry. And it can make things confusing. It can make it harder to work with afterwards because you've got to go through more polygons to be able to get to the place that you want it to be. And that's just not necessary. Ooh, got one too many there. Turn that back on. I'm just going around, click on one, click on the target, click on the source, click on the target, click on the source, click on the target. Or you can click and drag, right? I can click from the first one and drag out to there. I like the click method. And bring that down, bring that down. Boy, there's a lot to fix there. So I probably could have done that a little bit more in a little bit more of an organized manner when I started, but c'est la vie is not a problem. Okay, so that's already a little bit better. That double that goes along the bottom is also maybe not necessary. So here, I'm going to do that a little bit differently. So I just stitched, target welded the same way along there. But now what I'm going to do is grab edge, double click along that edge. So you see it goes right up, cutting across there, comes over here and stops there, right? It's not going around the chimney. So again, control backspace, and that gets rid of that entire edge. The only problem that we have to deal with is that we now have this face that is now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So no problem. We will connect these two. There we go. Okay, so that's not so bad. Again, more cleanup. Let's get rid of that. And then we can grab that control to add to your selection. Select those and connect. We could do that further down the line if you wanted to put in more details, like if there was a window right here, you might not want that to be on an angle. You might instead actually want to cut it horizontally across. There's, like I said, there's more than one way to do anything that you want to do in 3D modeling. And again, another little cleanup over here, because we don't need the vast majority of that or any of it. Control backspace, grab vertex, and we're going to connect that to there. And that to there. And that'll do me just fine. So now, let's save. So we don't need to iterate this time, so we're just going to go Control S, and that saved our document overwriting what we had created before. So now, let's do this breakfast nook. So the breakfast nook sticks out even a little bit further, right? It comes out off of these polygons on the front. And sticks out kind of in a side of a hexagon, basically. So it's going to come a little bit out just to have a little bit of backing, and then it's going to go on a 45-degree angle and then a flat front. And the roof is going to come off on those diagonals and reconnect up here, right? So we've got this diagonal from the wall coming down and then down into a flat window. And these are 45-degree angles coming off of the forwardmost window and making the gap between there and the wall. And looking on the side, it also has a footing, right? It comes right down to the ground. Some of these, on some houses, these breakfast nooks are going to be a floating piece that don't have anything underneath it because they're add-ons to the house and not a constructed part of the house. That also means the room on the inside is going to be a little bit different, because the one that's just jutting out of the house without any footing underneath it means that it's basically just a bench right? It's not anything majorly supported. Whereas this particular design is probably going to have a little bit of an extra bit of flooring that goes a little bit further out. Um, that was built as part of the house and not as an add-on to the house. So with the geometry that we have, it's not quite perfect. Actually, that line does line up with the underside of the mini roof of that. So actually, that's pretty good. So let's just come to the front. So we're going to want to have some vertical edges coming along here so that we can pull this whole bottom section out. So let's go ahead, make sure we're grabbing front edges. Now here, because we've got front and back edges visible, although I can't grab the back because I've got ignore back facing on, right? If I turn that off, I can grab that. That looks like it's in the front, but it's not. It's in the back. So what we're going to do is hide the back of the building. We're not going to delete it. Obviously, we're going to want to use that for later. But we want to not have to worry about all these polygons, right? We just want to have something come off of here. Here, we can even hide all that because none of that is necessary. So we just select what we want, come over here and hide selected. So now all we have is this little piece, and we can add some geometry to this. So Alt X, get our transparency back, right click, we're going to add our cut tool. We're just going to cut that down. It does not need to be accurate because we are going to straighten them out ourselves. So right click again to get rid of cut. We grab that, scale, drag along the X, and now we can be sure that those are both vertical. Going back to the front, we just need to move that over a little bit. And this edge, I kind of feel wants to be two edges, right? We want to have either side of the window. So what we're going to do is to chamfer that, or camphor that, depending on who you talk to. I prefer chamfer because it's a CH word. I think that makes more sense. And then we're going to grab these three faces. And first we're going to extrude them out just a little bit, just to make a little thickness away from the building. Or if you look from the side, we want just this little bit of a indent, and then we can grab only that middle one and pull that out all the way to where it needs to be. So we pull that out to there, and now we've got a shape that comes out a little bit from the wall, hits that 45 or so degree angle, and then flat across the front. So the next thing we need is that roofing piece. So that roofing piece, you might think, oh well, if I just grab, that and pull it up, that's not so bad, but actually it is. First, we're gonna cut from this vertex to that vertex. Actually, that might not work so badly now. So if we grab that and pull it up, now we're talking. We still have some cleanup to do, but this gets us just about there. No, we'll keep that there. Next, if we bring this, bring this up just a bit, And we're going to do another cut along the front, just connecting that over that. Right, so that it's this peak is pointed to that, and we've got another nice square shape here. We're going to grab that chamfer tool again, drag that out, and we're going to make those vertical. And we can scale from the middle and only grab along the X. And we place those just about there. But you notice I was getting some weirdness over here because we have a face that has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 faces. Ooh, that's not good at all, right? Right? 6 faces? No, no, no. 4 faces. We want 4 faces. So to do that, we can easily grab those two, and connect. And so then we'll grab those two and those two and connect. All right, so now we've got a whole bunch of quads and a triangle, and the triangle's not a problem. Get that transparency back. Oh, actually, I wasn't paying attention a little bit. What is that doing way down there? That needs to be right up here. And this should be about there. Now to make that window, like I was mentioning earlier, you kind of want to have things on separate pieces. So for this window, we're just going to extrude it in a little bit, like that. And we're going to unhide all. Let's bring back that building. All right. Now I also have this edge here, which I kind of feel should be more aligned with a different wall. It's because of it connecting down here that is coming to there, but then going off on that diagonal. So let's grab some edges. And we can grab that. And then these, we want to snap a line. Whoops. From that vertex. Be a little bit tricky because it wants to sometimes grab another selection. Just like that. Okay, well, that's not working for me, so instead I'm just going to do it a little bit manually. Like, oh, that's fine. Okay, so let's just do that kind of manually. Turn on the transparency, bring that right over. Oh, ho, ho. I think I've got one too many because that is deforming something. What's going on here? Oh, well, I still have snapping on. That might be causing a problem. So, yeah, right to there. Maybe just ever so slightly more. There we go. So now that's nicely lined up. Comes right off there. Lots of quads. This little piece doesn't matter. Because it's on the bottom. Nobody's going to be looking at the bottom of our house. And that gives us a nice square here to be able to inset that window and all that. So if we turn off our polygon edges, you can see we've kind of got a bit of a house going on here. So for a lot of these windows, what you're going to want to do is just use the inset tool. So with inset, it creates a new polygon that comes inside of the previous polygon connected by the corners. Now that could be really good for beveling, right? That makes a nice little bevel there. But it's also good for our windows because what we can do, again in transparency, Alt X, and then we just scale this down and we move it over. Now it's staying along this plane, so this being a little bit smaller than this doesn't matter. It's working to our advantage. So long as we keep in control. That, right click, extrude with settings. That's going to remember the last extrusion that I did and set it exactly there. So now that window's pushed in. What else we got? We got two big windows on this front part here. Let's put those in. Luckily, they are both along the front, so we're just going to grab those two front, inset by settings. So there's two different modes to inset. There's either by group, which is to say that it grabs, it it creates that face towards the inside of the whole selection, right? So I've got four faces selected, so it's making the inside of this selection. Whereas if I select only those two, you see it's making an inset from those two. The other mode is by polygon. So it makes an inset from each of the polygons that you have selected, insetting by the same amount. So that's fine for our purposes. So let's just scale these in a bit. Oh, okay, well, they're not quite the same orientation. So let's get that up. Should be the same height at least. Maybe slightly lower there. And then we grab our edge, pull that over, grab that edge, pull it over. And then we grab those faces back and we right click, extrude with settings, check mark, and then we've got those two inset. So I'm not going to go too crazy about putting in all of the doors, all of the windows. You could figure out that it's really the same idea, right? So like all of these roof windows, we can easily say, okay, well, we could put more edges in to control that, like putting one right down the middle here. All right, that's going to go right through. We connect there. It's a little more evenly spaced, so we can say, you know what? And actually, I'm going to get rid of this temporarily, just so that I have this big square to work with. So we can add to that selection, inset by group. But you see what's going on here. It's doing a little bit of a weirdness, because if you come too far, this wants to keep coming in on the diagonal, but this is keep coming on the vertical. So if you go too far, it ends up overlapping one on top of the other. So we're going to make it so it's just not overlapping. And then we just target weld that to the corner. So each of these, let's scale locally. And we can bring those down. Let's make that a little wider, a little wider. So how do those line up in the end? Not quite, but we do have the correct number of windows, I believe. Oh, we are one shy. Okay, well, we're not going to worry about that quite yet. Let's just keep that on the face. We slide those. Okay, that's not agreeing with me so much. So, we'll just do them one by one. What you doing? Why are you being a pain? Okay, we'll go along edge. You like a long edge? You like long edge. Okay, so we do it. Come on then. Doing that properly for me? Yeah, looks like you are. It's not XZ. And let me grab that. Whoop. Back to edge. Along face, we scale so that we can get those to be nice straight edges again. And okay, how about normal? Is normal working for me? No, normal is not working for me. Actually, we don't need a constraint to be able to move it horizontally because they are aligned with the roof already. All right, so we can just bring those horizontals in. Here, let's do these right now. We'll worry about that last window later. And now along face so that we can do these. Oh, well, edge should be fine then. Because up along the edge should be straight there. All right. See, it can be weird because if I'm by edge and dragging that up, you see it's getting bigger and bigger because the edges are actually on that diagonal. So we need that on the face. Base. And back to edge to bring these up into position. And take those, right click, extrude, extrude. There we go. And now we've got all those pushed in. Right, so the doors, the other windows are going to work exactly the same way. What I am going to do next is build this little sunroom thing. So basically, that's a big box with, I would assume, a diagonal on these two windows, right? I believe that these four are flush and perpendicular to the main back wall. These are going to be diagonal, and then these doors are going to be facing straight back. And then for the windows, you see there's a couple of square windows that lead up to one peak, and then you've got a couple of triangular windows to make those front angles. So we're going to start off by making a box that's the base, and then pull out, pull up, and do that jazz. So we're going to need a new box. Now, when you create a new object and you've got layers, you've got to be conscious of what layer you're creating on. So you see here house the house folder is in blue, so that means that I'm creating on the house layer. If I had the blue on default, now not the highlight blue, right? Like now I'm highlighting house, but it's still creating on default. And for instance, if I were to say, okay, I want to create on the house, but I'm going to hide the house. So for whatever reason, I've been working away. I don't need to see the house while I'm working on this, so I'll hide the house, which is the only thing on that layer right now. So I'll just hide the whole layer. But now when I come in to create a box, objects cannot be created on a hidden layer. So it tells you right away you're trying to create an object on an invisible layer. You're not going to be able to see what you're doing, so I'm not going to let you do that. So either we abort object creation or unhide the layer. So let's just unhide the layer. And that can be important when you've got, let's make sure nothing is selected. And once you've got a bunch of layers, that can be critically important. So I'm just going to go there to there, right click, delete, and even layer 9, delete. Oh, now that was another thing. It was the selected layer that was going to be created on, so I cannot delete it. I had to make house the active layer before I could delete the other one. So now I know that when I create my new box, it's going to show up right underneath house. There you go, box 01. So let's keep organized. So this is going to be the sunroom. And again, it's just a primitive, so we're going to right click, convert to editable poly. We really actually do not need the house, so we are going to hide selected. Select our sunroom, and let's line it up. So from the back, Alt X to enable transparency, and we move it over to centered. Scale that out a bit. Let's go to there. And we're actually going to scale this down to there. Right? And if we look from the right, it's too far forward, so we'll just bring that back and grab these edges on the front, sorry, these vertices on the front. We're going to pull it back to here where there's no angle. Radio. So now we'll grab these two edges, connect with settings, so we can go two edges, look at it straight from the back. And this is where, of course, they're perfect at exactly where I want them to be, but this is where pinch is going to be really handy. So I can pinch that and move them away from the center in equal amounts to be able to make sure that I've got that right spot. So now just grab that face, turn to the left, and pull that face out. So now we've got this shape. Now, because all those windows actually come to a center point, and actually they come to a center point basically straight above this line. So we're going to come back to our cut tool, right? Right click, cut. Oh yeah, if you come up all the way to the high part, because a right click menu is you start in the middle. So if you come up here, it might not let you come straight across over here. You might need to come kind of back down to the blues and back up. Just a word of warning. So we cut that to there. We cut that to there, just that we're nice and symmetrical. Now, I think I may have missed this point and not actually connected vertex to vertex. So I'm going to do a drag, take everything in that, excuse me, take everything in that corner, and you see vertex 3 selected, not 3 vertices, right? If I drag out farther, this is 3 vertices selected. If I select that, it's vertex 3, as in the number 3, vertex 1, vertex 5, vertex 13. Those are, because each vertex is numbered. And let's look back at the design. So this is all triangular windows that are coming up to a single high point, I believe, and not a flat roof, right? There's no flat part of this box here. They're all coming up to one point in the middle. So I'm going to do that. So let's, whoa, not there. Let's go straight from the top. We're going to grab these vertices and we're going to weld with options and start dragging that up until pop. And they pop together. If you went too far, you see it's going to start putting things together because it's welding by distance. So it's saying, okay, well, these are 0.5 meters across, let's say. So 0.4, 0.45, 0.48, 0.5, pop, these come together. And then these are, a little bit further. So as you go, 0.4, 0.5, 0.6, 0.7, 0.8, 0.9, 1, and then these all are going to collapse together. So you might just go too far, or the default might be too far. So just roll that down until things start coming apart to where you want it to. And we'll call that good. And we're just going to grab these two vertices on top. You could also grab the edge on top, comes out to exactly the same thing, and just pull that up to there. Beautiful, beautiful. Now that point actually is a little bit further back though. So we just drag that, pull it down, and we are going to, you know what, let's do that a little bit differently. Because this is a straight edge, if I pull that back and then try to swift loop, you see it's putting another diagonal, and each of these is going to be less and less of a diagonal. Right? This is sharpest, less sharp, less sharp, less sharp, almost flat, flat. So that's not what we want. We want nice square windows along that top section. So before pulling this back, what I'm going to do is leave it there because right now we've got nice straight edges coming vertically, right? That comes perfectly vertical. That comes perfectly vertical there. So if I put any loops in between, they are also going to be perfectly vertical. So let's grab all these edges, right click, and connect. And now we can put a third one. We're going to pinch a little bit and we're going to slide just like that, right? So each of these vertical lines is cutting out the section for the window. I accept. Now, and also this farthest forward point is where we want that to connect to, right? That is the spot where we dragged this to last time. So we just target weld you to there, and now we are looking better, right? So we've got our 4 side windows, our 3 top square windows, and the correct orientation for these. And let's just put those right in, right? So we've got actually, let's put one more swift loop, but we're going to put it horizontal just below the bottoms of the windows so that we can grab those. And actually that, yeah, we're also going to select these. So I'll just walk you through this actual selection. So click, shift click to get the loop, control click, control and shift click. So then I'm grabbing a ring of them, adding one to the selection, adding the new ring to the selection, right click. Again, we want to go to settings because if we just said connect, it would put 3 lines with a -6 pinch and then a -1 slide. We want to reset these all to 1 so that it's one edge right down the middle. And then we just grab these and grab these and connect. Because we actually want 2 windows there and the doors on the front. Excellent. So we're going to go that plus that, right? So we've got all of the window heights and the door height, and we inset. Ah, you see, that didn't do what we wanted, right? That inset the whole group, and it's even causing some bad geometry trying to go off on a diagonal. So again, inset settings by polygon, so each one is separate, and we'll correct this in a moment. Here, actually, let's not. We're just going to do it comme ça, and inset again, but by group, and there we go. Now we're going to add in all of these. Actually, are these good? We don't know that they're good yet. No, they are not. Okay, so let's, whoops. No, we're not going to go by face. Now, by dragging here and control drag, I'm making sure to grab the edges on both sides. And we don't have ignore back facing, so it won't just go off. I think I want that there. And these bottom edges I want just a smidgen lower. But we are going to need to be a little bit more manual about where we put these edges. So, no problem. It's over. This is coming off of the design ever so slightly, but I'm not terribly worried about this for this model. You can take certainly a lot more time and refine that a lot more when it matters, but for now we're just going to pull those in by local normal. That is doing some interesting things. That's kind of weird that that's not changing, because normally speaking, by group should be everything in one direction. Here, let's undo that. Extrude by local normal. Well, we'll accept that. And again, we're going to correct a little bit. We'll even deselect those. We're going to move them locally just over a little bit just to square that up. Same idea over here, just square it up. Again, we are putting other geometry inside of the windows to be able to create the window frames and the window panes, so we don't worry too much about this part. and the windows on top really come down to the same thing, right? We don't have a top-down view, but we can tell from here it's quite thin edging between the window panes. So we can easily just do you, you. You know what? Let's view from the front, and then we can just select all of these faces, but not those. And then for these, we're going to, again, inset by polygon. That's not bad. Maybe a little less. A little less. How's that lining up? Yeah, right to there, actually. And of course, we're going to extrude those inwards. Turn off transparency. And there we have it. Do we have intersections? We do have some intersections here. So actually we did a bad there. Let's grab those faces again. We're just going to do the same thing, but we're not going to extrude quite so far, right? We went too far bringing that in. So we need to bring that back a little bit. Just to there. That looks like there's no overlapping. Okay. And there we go. And if we unhide all, this back wall is not touching. So go into wireframe to be able to see through that building without actually having transparency on, and we just pull that back. So it's intersecting one into the other. And there we go. So I'm going to be leaving this off basically here. You can imagine how as the modeling goes forward, as you have more time to be able to develop things, that can become a lot more interesting of a shape. That becomes much more um, complex as you go forward, right? I've only been modeling for an hour and a half, basically, and of course taking my time as I'm showing you each of the buttons, showing you new tools, and kind of skipping over a lot of the unnecessary not skipping over things, but I'm just kind of running through things with you while I'm trying to teach you it. If I were doing this on my own, this would have been done a lot more quickly, and potentially some things being done a little bit more differently. I try to go for quite a realistic view of things, so I'll often be putting in a lot of little details. And the smaller the detail, the less likely you are to be modeling it here, right? When you build a house, you know that, okay, well, it's made up of bricks and mortar and the roofing tiles. Well, you're not going to, for a game model anyhow, you're not going to build individual bricks and stack them up and then make individual roofing tiles and stack those up and expect the game to be able to run it. Because by the time you get up to that point, your polygon count is going to be through the roof, and the complex geometry is going to be causing a lot of issues with lighting. Lighting becomes infinitely more complex as you add more and more objects. So you want to keep it as simple as possible for the game ready model. Now, to texture that model, I may very well be creating individual tiles, and what I can do is, like here, if we just give this a little bit of a bulge, right? If we connect with two, and then we grab this face and just pull it out. So if you think of this as maybe one singular tile, what I can do is array this, sorry, tools, array. We turn on the preview and slide those along X. And let's make that 2D. Let's put 3 rows, whoops, along Y with a little bit of a Z to form. And let's move that further along X so it comes out that way. Right. So these can be used as roofing tiles, but I wouldn't actually use this geometry for roofing tiles. Because if I select all this, let's see, 7. Sorry, let's get some real good details. So we can come over here, viewport configuration again into statistics. So we can go polygon count, total plus selection. We don't need the vertex frames per second. Okay. So you see, total, this whole thing, this whole scene is now just 1,000 polygons. That's very low. Video game characters are in the 30,000, 40,000 polygons nowadays, and that's fully animatable, beautiful textures and everything. So just the house in this back piece is 565 polygons. And just to compare, remember 565 just for the house and the sunroom. If I select these instead, I've got 420 polygons just with these roofing tiles. And this isn't many roofing tiles, right? I might need to copy this over 5 times in one direction, 10 rows up, and that's just one side of the roof. So what I'll do instead is actually use this to create a texture map that looks like these tiles. And that texture map I would apply to the roof after unwrapping it. Right? So I would apply a roof texture to that. Same with the bricks. I'm not going to build out every single little brick. I'm going to apply a brick texture that's got bump information, that's got shadowing information, and the specularity of the tiny little rocks that makes up the material, or the tar, or the larger rocks. And I would just apply that material. Let's make this just and I would apply that material to this part of the house. So you can have very highly detailed, sculpted, to micro detail, but not have to have that used in the game. You just use material on it that has that information that makes it look more detailed than what the model actually is. And that using normal maps, specular maps, reflection maps, and special shaders. And basically, the difference between a shader and a material is that a shader will change depending on circumstances. So, depending on if it is wet, you have that information that as it gets wet, this material changes its specularity level, right? When a material like a cotton material is going to be very non-specular, right? It's not creating hot highlights. It's all very soft, and it's diffusing the light quite a lot. If I were to dip this shirt in water and show you again, its specularity is going to go through the roof, right? It's going to become very shiny because of the water that's affecting it. It's going to become a darker color because of that. So that's what a shader does versus a material. A material is really just the straight up paint specular bump information. A shader is a much more complicated beast, but it's necessary in modern games, right? And I remember when the original Uncharted game came out from Naughty Dog on PlayStation 3, the first time I walked into the water and walked out, that I could decide, he's not all wet and he's not all dry. He's only wet up to here. So you're not actually swapping out materials. You're just saying, oh, well, make it look this way because of a dynamic system. Anyways, I'm going above and beyond the Call of Duty explaining that stuff to you. So I'm hoping that you followed along at least for some of this house, and that hopefully you enjoyed what you saw. And I will come back for episode 3. Let's unhead off. I will come back for episode 3 in a few days, and I'll show you some more tools. I'm thinking what we're going to do next is building a car tire. So we're going to do a different kind of symmetry. We're going to use some modifiers. So we're going to lay out the pattern of a real tire. We're going to get the real tread pattern. We're going to lay that out, and we're going to wrap that around a tire to get ready to attach that to a car or just put it in the back for junk. I could also come back on this house. If there are certain things about the house you want to see built, we can certainly go into doing doors, actually, which could be interesting, using the beveling tools, the windows to have them as multiple pieces that work logically. So if you have any comments, please do let me know. Shoot me a line. Let me know if you do or do not want to see anything. Keep in mind now, this is for beginners. I want to hit up for the people that have never hit 3ds Max before, that haven't done 3D modeling before. If you're well experienced with 3D modeling, then I'm probably not a great help yet, but we'll get there. I'm hoping to add a little bit of complexity each time, keep things interesting. So that's been a day. Thank you very much for tuning in, and I will see you next time. Have a great time. And don't stop 3D modeling. Don't stop 3D modeling.